time that the small number of trebuchets at our disposal will see such success." "Oh," Lucilla said. "I know they seem impressive," Kai said, hearing the disappointment in her voice, "but they really aren't that far from the ballista that you already use. The counterweight lets them throw heavier stones further, but the basics are still the same. Just like you would have had to eventually scale the walls, so will we if we want to get through, especially if we want to do it before the Carthaginians can reinforce themselves." "Then why haven't we done it? I thought our sources said we now outnumber the Carthaginians, at least the ones on Britannia." "We do, but not by enough. I've gone over the numbers with Sophus and with my commanders, and they have enough manpower to make any breach we attempt extremely costly. We've managed to maintain the core of our forces in defeating two much larger armies. I'd hate to give up that experience now, when we have just the last city to take." "So we starve them out? I didn't think we had time for that." "We don't. We might have to go over the wall and accept the casualties, but I gave Velius and the other legates 5 days to come up with an alternative plan that didn't wipe us out. They still have 4 days left. How are your Caledonians faring?" While Kai took the bulk of the Britannic forces, including all of the Roman legions, directly to envelop Londinium to bottle up the remaining Carthaginian forces, he'd released both the cavalry and the independent Caledonian forces to secure the rest of the countryside. Ramirez's spies and the scouts they'd sent out had already told them that the Carthaginians had stripped the rest of the territory of soldiers as soon as word had reached them of their army's defeat. Kai had hoped to both envelop the Carthaginians and catch those smaller units in the field so they could be defeated piecemeal, but as often happened, the victory left their forces almost as disorganized as the Carthaginians. It had taken almost a week to get his army moving south in enough force to make sure the Carthaginians didn't attempt the piecemeal destruction of his detached forces that he wanted to do to them. That had given the Carthaginians enough time to pull their men back. Worse, it had also given them enough time to strip most of the countryside of food, or at least the food they hadn't already taken to supply the massive army the Britannic allies had just defeated. That meant his planned sweep of the southern half of the island for Carthaginians had instead turned into an aid mission of sorts. There had also been the issue of sending the Northmen to help out the Romans who'd been living under Carthaginian rule for almost 100 years. To them, it must have looked like a barbarian horde sweeping through on the heels of the fleeing Carthaginians. Initially, Kai had been concerned by this, and it was only the need to keep the more disciplined Roman legions, who operated better in a siege environment around Londinium, that had him sending out the Caledonians instead of the Romans to clear the countryside of hostiles. In hindsight, however, this might turn out to be one of the better decisions he'd made. Kai had been very direct with Drest, the Caledonians' current commander, about the need to treat the locals well. It's also what had prompted him to send Lucilla with them. He'd hoped the presence of the Roman emperor's daughter would make it clear this wasn't just an invasion of another foreign people. Thankfully, the Caledonians had handled themselves well, and there had been only a handful of incidents, all swiftly taken care of by the Caledonians themselves. As they realized these weren't new invaders, but an unusual form of countrymen under the new empire, the southern Romans had quickly begun warming to the Caledonians, helped in large part by the food the legions had liberated from the Carthaginian army and begun redistributing to the people it had been taken from. In the long run, Kai thought this might be a good step in helping these Romans assimilate better into the new Britannic Empire, foregoing some of the problem spots they'd had with the Romans living in the middle of the island. "Good," Lucilla said. "We've cleared almost all the way to the western coast. Word has started to spread ahead of us now, and we've even had a few villagers come out to greet us with cheers, instead of hiding in their homes, hoping we leave them alone." "Good. Laertius and his cavalry have swept up and down the east coast, so I think we've got the Carthaginians all bottled up in Londinium, which will make the next steps easier." "The next step being?" "First, we need to get as much planting happening as possible. We can't get any of the new farm equipment out here this season, since most of that is being used around Devenham or sent up to the Caledonians, but once we push the Carthaginians off the island entirely, we're going to have to put together a large enough army to take the fight to them, and we will need to feed that army." "Why?" "Why take the fight to them?" "Yes, we have Britannia now. Why not just stay here and let them do what they want everywhere else?" "Because they won't leave it at that. The army we beat was massive, and yet for the Carthaginians it was on the small side, and they have dozens more just like it. If they really put their willpower behind it, they can retake what we've managed to free. We were lucky they have been distracted consolidating their gains in Germania, which kept them from putting the full weight of their military against us." "And your solution to their massive armies is to attack them?" "It is a widely accepted tactic that goes back to the earliest days of warfare. Attacking a stronger enemy where they are weak, continually keeping them off balance and unable to build the force to attack you directly, is not a new idea.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.